Welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking on evolution of leadership in this particular presentation. So let us understand what else should we be covering. I'll give you a brief requirement for leadership, as in why leadership is so pertinent for any organization to succeed, the definitions thereof, and probably we'll talk about various processes. Now, processes as on when on basis, and how does it help an organizations to achieve the overall objectives thereby. So evolution of leadership defined way back at the beginning of the 20th century. What exactly happened? It was all about centralization of power. It is all about control of power. The power center was the vested interest for any persons to be feeling superior, and that was leadership defined as. Now, what is a power? The person who has the capacity to distribute resources is what the power is all about. It now, resources at that point of time might have been raw material, might have been money. Probably today it might be of the, then it shifted to knowledge. Probably today it is all about data analytics and so on and so forth. So 1900 to 1929 with all about centralization of power. Then began the trait approach as to the characteristic of a person, which termed as the leadership qualities. Then probably we went into 1940s of all about team building and group management and group approach and social building and community uh, point of view. So from there in the 50s, it was group theories, shared goals, and effectiveness. It's the overall well-being of the largest population out there. 60s was leadership as a behavior. Remember, from characteristics, we now looked into the behavior of how a person conduct himself with the environment, with the other, in the presence of other people. 1970s was all about the theoretical aspect that led into the study of organizational behavior per se. So yes, 1980s there was an explosion of research as far as what exactly makes a person click. It's a leadership well, is it the influence and the traits, or is it the transformation process, the basic availability or the capacity of the leader to transfer or to make a huge impact in the life of the followers per se. So that is what we are going to talk around it. Am I sure? 21st century, the process of leadership was all about authentic leadership, spiritual leadership, servant leadership, and adaptive leadership. Now, therein, the change difference, the stark differences, it is all about being transparent. A person who is transparent, whose views can be openly discussed, whose behavior can be openly dissected. Probably you have been able to see the conviction, the honesty, and the truthfulness of the person out there. The authentic relationship comes around it, which further fragmented. If there are no profit orientation, it would be spiritual leadership, as in the overall well-being of not only the mind but also of the body. Servant leadership, it was all about the service of the other people, in which the power can ascribe to the person around here. It is what the servant leadership was all about it. And then is eventually that adaptive leadership came into place, wherein a person needs to be very flexible and suit his approaches, suit his style as per the requirement of the situations. And that is what we are going to around it. So at times you shift from adaptive, shift from authentic to spiritual or to servant, as the case might be. So we'll talk about some definitions as of leadership is concerned. Is it the focus of the group process? Is it a personality process? Is it an act or a behavior? The power relationship between leaders and followers, the transformational process, or a skill perspective? Now, this is what we are trying to find actually where leadership could be studied, in which vertical, which are the segment that leadership can be viewed from, what are the lenses that one can go around it. The lenses are very short, and probably I've named six of them in this particular slide. That's the group process, the personality perspective, the behavior, the conduct, the act that person goes around doing it, the power relationship between the followers and the leaders, a transformational process, and a skill perspective thereby. So, leadership defined, leadership is a process where an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve what? To achieve the common objective. Now, as a group, if everybody wants to achieve a particular goal, and if a person can navigate all those people to achieve such goals, it is what leadership is all about. It is the way of influencing the other people. So let us understand the central component, or should I say the phenomena of leadership. Now let us understand what is a leader. Leader as in a person, and leadership as in the qualities of the person. So leadership is a process. It involves influences. It occurs within a group context and probably are ascribed to a particular goal, which is what everybody would come and flock together to for work as a team, as an organization. So that is what leadership is all about. It then let us understand who this person who is supposed to ascribe or prescribe to this particular qualities of leadership. The leaders are the followers are involved together. The leaders and followers are mutually inclusive to each other. They are dependent, they are woven together. The leaders often initiate and maintain the relationship. Leaders are not above, or should I say better than the follower, as the case might be. So leadership described is trait versus process leadership, assigned versus emergent leadership, leadership and power, leadership and coercions, and leadership and management. This is what we are looking forward towards. It is a trait versus a process leadership, as the case might be, the assigned versus emergent leaders, the power relationship, the power to force someone, the followers, to obey their command or commandments thereby. And this is where the differences about leadership and the management is all about it. Let us understand with the process and the trait leadership what becomes the process and what is the trait leadership, as the case might be. Remember, in trait leadership, we are talking about the characteristic of the person. It is, let's say, the height, the intelligence, the extroversion, the fluency, or the other trait being confidence, the vocabulary, the way you communicate. And then that is what being followed or probably held in a high esteem by the followers. But in a process leadership, it is continuous communication, interaction, and everybody will able to understand how the other person or how themselves are getting benefited with this kind of relationship. So this particular diagram has been adapted from A Force of Change, How Leadership Differs from Management, written in 1990 by J.P. Cotter. So this was the book where it was published in. So certain individuals have some innate characteristic or qualities that differentiate them from non-leaders. So it resides in certain people, absolutely, and restricted to those with inborn talent, as the case might be. So the trait versus process leadership, how do we go around it? Leadership is a property, or should I say a set of property possessed in a varying degrees. Remember, I can be honest probably 99% of the time, not 100% of the time. I am confident probably 80% of the time, and not 100%. So there are variation. I can have a height of 6 feet 2 inches, or I can have a height of 5 feet 9 inches, the case you want to go around it. So it is a properties or set of properties to a varying degrees that one particular person possesses, mentioned in 1982 by Jago, observed in a leadership behavior, and probably can be mimicked or learned. Assigned versus emergent leaders. Assigned leadership is based on occupying a position within the organization, the team leaders, the plant manager, the departmental head, the directors. It is the position that one person has been appointed for, or the position that one person is working at, and that particular position comes with certain status, certain power, certain duties, certain responsibilities. And that is what, should I say, is mutually exclusive to that particular person. As a result, people would keep that gentleman or lady who is occupying that position at a higher pedestal, and that is an assigned position. But what is all about the emergent position, anything other than assigned? Here the person has not been promoted or given a particular position. It is what the followers are going to do. It is the followers who catapult a person to the position of a leader. And please understand, our individual needs to be perceived by others as the most influential member of the group, regardless of the title. And there is no position. Now, why do they have this kind of faith or trust in that individual? Because probably they have. Because they display a lot of characteristics of transparency, of communication, of technical knowledge, of skills, of numerical ability, of logical things, of foreseeing things, of thinking, coming out of boxes, problems to all kind of solutions. So it emerges over a period of time, and this is obviously affected by personality and gender thereby. So yes, leadership and power, the capacity to influence or potential to influence is what we are looking into it. Ability to attract other people's attitude, their action needs to be understood. Remember, the basis of social power is all about referent, expert, legitimate, reward, cohesive, and information. Believe me or not, I have been trying to tell it to you about powers. Powers is wherein you have certain abilities to distribute resources, probably, or power is something where you can give or assign some favors to somebody else. So it's a relational concerns for both leaders and followers. Now, where do we get those powers from? It's a referent power, probably been referred by somebody at a higher authority. People are going to take your words or your condition in a much more favorable condition. You being an expert, probably the most knowledgeable fellow in this particular field, definitely your opinions matter. You being a legitimate, going by the rules of the law, or whatever the legal system prescribe, you are actually have the power, have the rightest duty to go around it. Reward is essentially the incentives, the monetary gain, the non-monetary gain that one can describe or distribute from the position of power. Coercive is probably the other way, other diagrammatically opposite views of reward, where instead of rewards, instead of incentive, you might be coerced or forced to do certain work, probably an information. Now, this particular thing has been already been mentioned by Raven in 1965 and French and Raven in 1959. So six bases of power, we have been talking around it. It's the basis of power of the basis of social power by J.R. French and B. Raven way back in 1962, mentioned in Group Dynamics Research and Theory. This was the journal that came around it. So just adapted from there, we said that referent power is based on the follower's identification. Liking for the leader, a teacher who adores by the student has a referent power. Similarly, of the expert power based on the follower's perception of leader's competence. A tour guide who is knowledgeable about the foreign country has the expert power. A legitimate power associated with having status or formal job authority. A judge who administered sentences in the courtroom exhibit legitimate power. Reward power is derived from having the capacity to provide rewards to others. A supervisor who gives rewards to employees who works hard is using reward power. Coercive power is derived from having the capacity to penalize or probably punish also. A coach who sits a player on the bench for being late to the practice is using nothing but coercive power. Information power, very powerful these days, derived from possessing knowledges that others want or probably need. A boss who has an information regarding the new criteria to decide employee promotional eligibility has an informational power over others, and this is what we are going to go around it. So let us understand the leadership and powers. Remember, position powers are derived from a particular position, rank in the office or in the organization, whereas the personal powers is again derived from not from the position but from the acceptability of the followers, of the colleagues, of the co-workers, because of their acumen, because of the person excelling in certain knowledge or vocabulary abilities, or probably even confidence per se. So we have two different powers based on position and personal. Types of basis of power is in cases of position is all about legitimate, reward, coercive, and information. Whereas for personal power, it has been only around ascribed to expert and referent thing. Again, has been mentioned in by J.P. Cotter way back in 1990 is a is on an article which was written in the journal A Force for Change, how leadership differs from the management thereby. So shift in the leadership power. What did Kellerman said in 2002, 2012, sorry, approximately 10 years earlier than today? Power no longer is the domain of the leaders. It has lost its prominence altogether. Follower demands more than the leader nowadays, as in the customer is supposedly to be treated as a king, and not only treated, they behave as a king. Access to technology has empowered followers. Yes, we can hop onto the online version and have anything and everything being searched or referred back. And now is the case where we are all talking about cloud computing or crowdsourcing. And the crowdsourcing, everybody will be putting in their knowledges, putting in their viewpoints, and you can just have an opinion that 80% of the crowd will tell and give an opinion which is similar to each other, which gives you a fairly big idea about what you are referring or why what you are searching for. So access to technology has actually empowered followers. Leaders nowadays needs to be more and more transparent, and there is obviously, yes, with the advent of social media, a sort of decline for the respect in leaders. Leadership as a social contract between leaders and followers have changed altogether. It's mostly nowadays on a transactional basis and not on a transformational basis. So yes, Kellerman said in 2012 there is a definite shift in leadership power, which no longer is leader centric but has shifted it based to the followers. Followers are becoming more demanding. The access to online or world wide web or the internet has empowered every one of them. People are becoming transparent, and with the advent of social media, now you are able to touch or keep in touch of every activity of each every individual that they post around it. So leadership and cohesion, now this is where we need to understand. Cohesion is involving negativities, involving force to impact or influence change, influencing others to do something, that by manipulating rewards, by manipulating penalties in the work environment. And that is what coercion is all about. It so a person is doing your diktat or implementing your diktat, but not with his own or her own sweet will. Probably the circumstances is much more powerful, much more demanding. As a result, the person yields to it, and that is what coercion to the leaders is all about. It so use of threats, punishment, as the case might be, or a negative reward. Examples, there are many. We have Jim Jones, we have Adolf Hitler, nowadays with Al Qaeda, the Taliban leaders. So power and restraint used to force followers to engage in extremities of behavior, as the case might be. We'll talk about the quotas in 1990. What did he say for leadership or management? Management activities produces orders and probably regularity or consistency, whereas leadership activities produces change and movement. There is a visible change in the process altogether. So yes, management activities is all about planning, budgeting, organizing, and staffing. Management activities is all about controlling and problem solving, whereas leadership is essentially setting direction. Did I say leaders are supposed to navigate the followers onto the right path so that they achieve their objectives? That is what we are talking about, establishing direction or aligning people, motivating them, inspiring them. So these are the various major activities of management and leadership, which is played out in a different level, but both are essential for organizations to succeed. We would love to wind up this particular presentation by this slide, wherein managers are unidirectional authority, whereas leaders are supposedly a multi-directional authority. Remember, managers are reactive, leaders are emotionally involved. They are invested in their followers. Managers prefer to work with people solving. Leaders on the other side would love to play with certain ideas and solicit response from their followers and getting themselves involved in the problems. You see the approaches between managers and leaders. Managers would have a low emotional involvement. That is not the case. In fact, leaders would like to be emotionally involved. Did I say they are invested in their followers? Yes, they would love to expand and probably explore options that comes around it. They would like to change the view that people think, the way they think, and what exactly is possible and not so possible, as the case might be. This is what the leaders is all about. It with this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video.